It's been a while. You look very well.
We have no option other than getting to meet in order to move on along the arc of consciousness. Nobody has any option. And we look
that's the best.
we look for freedom, we look for emancipation. So no option other than allowing that which was ever there hide behind the veils of appearances, and for us to constantly yearn to be reassured by the perfect light. That's all. Oh.
Okay, thank you. So the first question I want to ask you is, I want to ask you to cast your mind all the way back to your childhood and teenage years. And I read a little bit of your biography, so I know you grew up in an environment and in a family that was soaked in spirituality and words of the different saints. So would you mind choosing maybe one or two experiences from your childhood and teenage years that to you are a kind of maybe a precursor or a harbinger of what was to become your spiritual life?
Respect for life, total respect and reverence for life, especially human beings. Real, genuine concern, consideration, respect, and honor to human beings and to all other creatures from there, to the point where ants or little insects that come to the bedroom or to the room, they were swept out gently and told that, please keep away, we'll feed you outside. Don't. This is our little shell of a domain. I think that was lived fully by everyone in that extended household. There's nothing special. I never grew up thinking that we are spiritual or special or higher, not at all. For me, it was normal. So years later, when I would tell people, why can't we be normal? I see a face looking up, say, I don't know what normal is. So it was that basically. That was for me the precursor and the foundation for awareness of awareness, presence, the sacredness of the moment, which later on became words, and I read about it and I found a lot of it boring actually. But it was quite natural just to be there and enjoy it, enjoy the visible, the invisible, the outer and the inner. It was only through reading a bit, which was much later in my life, about Sufis and these sort of things, that I began to be aware of all of these intellectualized or mentally discriminative aspects. And I really didn't care. It really didn't affect me either. It was just that being, the thrill of the infinitude of being without knowing anything about these words. It was just there. And there was total transparency, which I later discovered that it was also is an aspect of honesty and which requires courage. But it was for me natural, very normal. I think in all of our extended household and the visitors and the guests, this is how it was. Respect no matter who they are. Strong, weak, intelligent, or we treated many people who came to our household who were in need of help or whatever, same as everybody else. They didn't make a special effort or a special consideration. Yeah. I only learned about the other and otherness later on. It was, I grew up in a much more fluid atmosphere of accountable without having to go back in remembrance and awareness and punishment or reward. It's just instant. It was there, clear. It just moved. Movement in time by courtesy of the timeless.
I understand, and I think you would agree that most people who grew up in at the same atmosphere and surrounding as you did not end up choosing to dedicate their life to the search of meaning and purpose and ultimately of spiritual freedom and truth. So was there anything in your personality makeup or in any experiences that you think kind of directed you from early childhood in that direction, or did it come later in life?
No, I think it was embedded from the beginning because it was not made or understood by me to be separate from life itself. Iraq was beginning to apply and live in a more secular situation. Government began to open schools, medical care and other things. And I grew up in that very pleasant atmosphere of not experiencing differentiation so much in religion, especially not in sects either. It was much more according to your performance and according to your ability to do good and excel. That was the ambience I grew up as a child, and also in my professional life. When after graduating in science from the UK, I joined the oil company, and there were all kinds of people. Muslims, different denomination, Christians, others. And it was only again in pursuit of doing your best and pursuit of excellence. So until my, if you like, mid-20s, this was my stream I grew up with. Nobody said, look at my parents or what wealth we have or what deprived background we have. There's none of that. What can you do now? And also there was much less concern and attention about wealth and material opulence or the outer. It isn't that we didn't care for it. No. We very much had, I never remember once having any clothes on me that were not clean, that were not nice, that I was not pleased with. I grew up very contentedly. And as I got exposed most to the Western world and the relentless drive towards outer achievement and outer manifestation of that, I understood it, but it didn't touch me deeply either. There were stages in my life that I could afford most of the things that most people aspire for. And I did indulge in a few luxuries and things, but for a short time, and it was really to enjoy the means rather than the end or opulence. It was enjoying that you have something comfortable, a good car, a good home, being able to fly anywhere one wants, whatever, with ease. That was it. I never really cared for it becoming a hallmark or becoming I never internalized it. It was there, I would use it. It was not there, wonderful. Enjoy the infinitude of space and no constraints of this desire and this fear and that's hope, and none of that. Also, I share with you that I really hardly remember a situation in which I had grief or sorrow. Hardly. I loved my parents immensely, and their influence on me had been immense also in every way. I revered them. that was it. When they passed away, I was there, did what I could. And that was it. In fact, few people close to me, they were surprised. How come you're not weeping, you're not crying? I couldn't explain it then, but I mean, now I can say, perhaps I grew up in an ambience that anything comes will go. Anything that begins will also disappear. Then later, when I began to really dive into the Quran, a lot of these things became clear to me. After the experience, after internalizing it, then if you like, that was like the story being told. Like the ayah says, it is he who created death and then life. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. So that you practice perfecting your action, which means perfecting awareness of your intention, which means perfecting thought and action and the inner and the outer in you fully in the moment. So this was, if you like, the story was told to me later, after I was really, this is very clear to me. I remember also
yes.
in the Bhagavad Gita that when Krishna says, it is my real follower or the person whom I love, it is he who is the same in wealth and poverty and in censure and in praise. He's the same. Then he is my beloved. And I said, I think I've been like this most of my life, without bragging, without feeling great, or just said, this is normal.
Were you aware that other people around you are somewhat different than that?
Yes, I was aware of privileges that were not quite discernible in me. And I took it for granted. I said, this is your lot. Be respectful to other people's lot and help wherever you can. The one thing which I remember practicing from very early childhood, which was inculcated in us, again, without telling a story, it was serve whoever you can, whenever you can, as soon as you can. And later on, I discovered this was an important thing in the Sufi paths, that give whatever you can of yourself. Otherwise, you accumulate more upon your own ego. So get rid of yourself by serving and helping, so that you know you are a soul, you know you're another entity. But this again came, the story was told after I lived the story. So.
Well, that's very interesting, and it's very different from what I heard from many people that I interviewed. You know, most people undergo a certain transformation sometime in life, sometimes when they're very young, sometimes later in life. But it's unusual for somebody to feel this continuity from childhood.
No, there was a continuity, but within it, there were blips of sudden, flash of light that was more. And most of it, I probably can remember 30, 40 more occasions which are unexpected, which really revealed something very deep in me, which was in a way hidden. And I share with you a story which I was remembering a few days ago, that I am a do-gooder. It was very shocking to realize that I have identified myself with a do-gooder. It was quite actually. It was actually in Bombay airport at that time. The distance between the international airport and the local was something like 1 kilometer or 2. You had to walk it. And you need to have a porter. I came from England to join Swami Chinmayananda, and I had a suitcase. England, it was winter. Often prefer to be winter in India than in England. So I had a heavy suitcase.
Yes.
In those days, you had to hire a porter paid officially. So you only collect a chitty or a ticket. You don't give money. So it was, and this nice sturdy porter carried my suitcase, at least 10 minutes walk with crowds. In India, one travelers those days would have 1,000 people to come and say goodbye. So it was very congested atmosphere. So when we got to the local airport, I was catching another flight, was good in time. I was very pleased. So I gave the porter a tip, and I knew the tip is more than his 1 month's salary. I knew it. I was actually revising it in my mind. What a generous little tip. So he took it from my hand, but held it in his hand, and looked at it and looked at me. He said, no, thank you. He gave it back to me. Almost picked up my arrogance and my being the superior do-gooder. So I learned a lot from people. For me, this was a blip. This was, you know, like a real smash on the head and on the face. You idiot, what? So I had quite a few of these, you know, and often from poor people. There was this very old, really decrepit Sudanese lady in Mecca. And I was going back to my luxury hotel. It was about noon. After having done my things in the precinct, and there were she was selling peanuts. So I just wanted a few peanuts to quieten my stomach until I'm in the hotel. So I gave her a note. They put paper cones, they put few peanuts in them. So it was a lot. So I wasn't going to eat it all. So I didn't want to, you know, affect my appetite for lunch. So I poured most of it and kept some. She looked at me. She took back my note of money, gave it back to me. Said, no, I can't do business with you. What you gave me has to be balanced by the amount I gave you. You don't want it, it's your problem. So honestly, so I mean, I learned from these people. Really. So these were in my life, if you like, the slight little shake-ups, not expected. What do you think? Because you have a bit something, or stop it.
Very interesting. Did most of these lessons or insights involve other people, or did you also get some insights or lessons when you were on your own, maybe in nature or in doing meditating or praying?
Yes, much more on my own, trying to break out of the zone of conditioned consciousness, thought, mind, you know, a lot of that. But I was very fortunate in that soon when I began to go into deep silence, meditation, trying to cut out anything that moves or connects time and space, I found really getting to that point of infinitude fairly easy. Just cut it out. No thought, no movement, and lose myself. And I really knew that the ultimate joy in this transient life is as good as your ability and ease of losing yourself to your soul. This is the model that I have. Your soul is eternal, it's divine, it's not subject to space and time, whereas yourself is emerging from the second womb, first one being your mother, the second one is the earthly womb within space and time. And I was fortunate, I think, to be able to do it anytime. Later on, when I was a bit more exposed publicly, it served me in a big way, because a lot of people talk a lot of nonsense, and I would just switch off. And yet I'm still there looking, and everybody thinks that which that is immensely helpful, I tell you. It's not pretense, it's not hypocrisy, it's just that they're regurgitating something that is very base, very gross, very crass. So why should I disturb them there? Just switch off.
Yes. Beautiful. I read in your introduction to the book, your autobiographical book, Son of Karbala. I want to read to you one of the sentences that really struck me as very relevant to my research. You wrote, "My quest and longing for truth has led me to conclude that the end of the search for meaning and purpose in life is only the beginning of the enlightened phase of joyful continuity. What I was really yearning for was closer than I had ever imagined. So it's beautiful. It indicates profound understanding, and it, to me, implies that there was an early stage in your life of seeking for meaning and purpose, and that led you into another phase of what you call as joyful continuity. Is that correct?
Yes, I can now reflect upon all of this and share with you that the summation of it and the conclusion is that consciousness is immense, vast, boundless, divine, sacred, whatever you like to give it. And it manifests in life as life. So life is sacred because it is timeless and it's eternal and it is boundless. And this is our origin. And this is what each one of us carries. And this is what I now know that throughout human history was considered sacred. And if you kill somebody intentionally with whatever, then as though you have killed life. So you have killed yourself also because you're part of life. Now I can say very clearly that this spectrum of reality of life, at one end of it, because we are linear, we are living in a four-dimensional world, at one end of it is boundless, infinite, timeless, eternal. And at the end of it is personal, local, the so-called me. They are inseparable. And the journey in life for everyone is a journey from the limited, the small, local, to the universal. So every one of us, some of us go very smoothly, some of us go in big hiccups, some of us suddenly are given shocks of so-called enlightenment, awakening, epiphany, whatever name you give it. Others just go in it a bit more gradually. But ultimately it's the same journey. The path is the same. From the limited, small knowledge to not knowledge anymore, to the source of all knowledges, to the absolute. From the tiny, whatever it is, me, to the vast, infinite source of life in me. So it's the same for everyone. Otherwise, there is no divine justice. It's only the way we trod that path is different. Sometimes people take a stop in one position for years. Some other time they just make a vertical jump. You can never tell. So
yes.
The passage you read is real and it is genuine. And that looking back, I feel everybody's life is a journey of discoveries, of evaluation to understand with a higher knowledge, with the light of knowledge, light, light, light. This is all what we are doing all the time. Until you realize that there are, in fact, two major zones in life. One is the heavenly, the infinite, the quantum field, the boundless, not describable, not discernible as this is energy, this is matter, this is high, this is low, this is good, this is bad. Just is that cosmic fluidity. Then it comes to the earthly, so-called temporary realities. This is appropriate, this is not, this is this gender, that gender, this is high, this is low, this is dark, this is light, this is mean, this is generous. All of the other judgments and all of the other descriptions we give to what we like and what we dislike and what we consider to be a virtue, what we consider to be a vice, all of the other things. So there are these two zones. We have no option other than living the human zone and battling in it and questioning it and also denying it. And like the 2-year-old child, always no, 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 no. It's wonderful, no. Why? Because that is the soul which is boundless in a way, speaking without the filter of the person or the ego or the upbringing of all of the likes and dislikes. No, no. So until the self, the ego as it is developed, a bit groomed. So you're now mature and so on. You don't deny your ego. You don't deny the so-called habits and personality and the language or religion or whatever. Not deny. But you also know that these things are preludes to something that is truly universal, beyond the mind, beyond matter, beyond thought, beyond limitations. So the introduction that you read from tries to say that, I came to a point of clarity that all of the vagueness, all of the uncertainties in human life are wonderful. They're part emerging from the perfect certainty, the utter complete perfection, which you will begin to witness once you are able to leave behind the earthly zone of mental and limitations, emotions, all of that. Once you're able to gently leave them behind quietly, you are exposed to a vastness that is not just mind-boggling, it's mind-destroying. It's spiritual, it is soul. So the soul has to be filtered like a bit of the sun. It has to be filtered for us to function as a dog or a cat or a human being. So it is that. It is immense. It has to be covered up. That's why also if a person dies, we immediately cover them up because of the stink. We still have a reverence for the soul. Not nice to put this thing which was a soul before, now is decaying, and cover it, and put it in a cemetery or something. We're already programmed to be really acknowledging the divine, the ever-present divine. But once that plug into the life left me, then the so-called me has departed. Now, most other deep reflections, religions, and so on tell us, no, the soul will continue and will carry some of the flavors of what you did and what you thought and so on. Therefore, there will be accountability. Therefore, you will be able to see or reflect upon all of your deeds and your intentions. So clarify them now, be open now, so as you don't have too much time wasted for the poor angels going over every item of your miserable life. Clear it. Do what you can. Apologize. Admit. Be honest. Needs courage. But it needs also the passion and the touch of that infinitude. Once that light touches us, then that is the divine obsession in each one of us. We're all obsessed. We're at a lower level, we are obsessed with wealth. At a lower level, we are obsessed with knowledge. We will accumulate everything. So we are obsessed with all of the so-called virtues. Obsession is our nature. So I just have to acknowledge it, that in truth, I am completely obsessive, but I have to appear to be normal and appear to be rational, functional, and so on and so forth. Because we've reduced everything in our life the last 200-300 years into practicalities. And that ended up being just a question of what is your worth in terms of money. But you are given treasure beyond measure. And here we're trying to measure all the time what degree. It's unavoidable also, because we have to grow slowly in this zone of conditioned consciousness. Higher, lower, better, this and more. Until we truly realize that we're obsessed with that which is boundless. Once you know that no wealth will be enough, and that is the foundation of all, if you like, greed. The greed for knowledge, light, spiritual greed has no end. So we are all greedy intrinsically, but it gets transposed into something very stupid. Buildings or cars or this or that. Idiotic. So, but often people realize when it's too late.
Yes.
How I wish I. So that's why the ambience of the family or the environment or the society is very important. So they don't deny
Yes.
wealth, outer wealth, and so on. But it has its limited space. So as those people, I met a person who grew up, you know, we in the East, we love carpets. And he ended up being the ultimate carpet merchant. Interesting man. Had, I think, at the peak, something like 70, 80 branches all over the world. 30, 40 of them were in America. 10 were in California alone. Anyway,
Yeah.
met him not maybe 15 years ago, 20. He was in his mid 80s, late 80s. Haven't seen it all, done it all. Sponsored thousands of carpet weavers in Asia, mostly Iran, Turkey, Pakistan, wherever. So it was interesting. He gave me as a gift a very, very valuable carpet, intense knots and things. So I asked him, what is the most enjoyable thing you do? He says, seeing the face of orphans that I take every few weeks, bags of money and so on to feed in different parts of the East, seeing their faces, smiling, smiling at God, smiling at life, smiling. So that for me is divine presence. And it's amazing. And he closed, by that time he was beginning to close most of his branches. He said, this love of beauty is not a beautiful thing. It is beauty that pulls us. It's the power of he who exudes beauty, majesty, knowledge, all that. I mean, as he was saying it, I thought this is the voice of truth, you know, in one being who pursued the material, helping people to have professions, food, whatever, giving them in advance money so that they can buy the wool and whatever, to realizing that the giver is one, the master is one, and we are all little puppets in that cosmic show.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Was there a point, or was there any specific time in your life where you realized that you made a certain shift from one stage of development to another?
Not very noticeably, it was more gradual, but there were a number of points in my life that there were no doors open, there was no road to go, there was nothing. Several times, I just didn't know where to turn, nothing. You know, absolutely closed. One of which I can share with you is coming back from a holiday in Europe, back to Beirut, where I was living at that time. And the ferry just got to the port and everything was shut down, rockets and thousands of mortar shells falling everywhere in the port. So here I was with a car, having driven car back, unable to get out of the port. Everything else was almost completely destroyed around. You know, nowhere to turn. No possibility for my mind or my, you know, whatever it is, survival instinct, or any way to help. Absolutely. So I enjoyed that. I discovered that came to me many times in my life. The best point actually in my life is when I don't know where to turn, nowhere to turn, no space anymore, no time either, just be frozen. Really. It's a wonderful experience. I do it to myself now regularly, whenever I'm a bit bored. Imagine everything is gone. Really, it is amazing. I suddenly begin to feel the breeze, the sigh. It's beyond magic. It's miracle.
This is fascinating. I'm just letting it in.
It's already in. It's only
Yes.
being mirrored with an outside. It's already there.
You see, this is a bit, I think I've been through situations where I didn't know what's up, what's down, what's forward and what's backward. Completely, I think somewhat similar to what you're describing. But when that happened, at the moment, I am always struggling to find my way and feeling very lost and unhappy. And only in retrospect, only looking back, I realize that deep below the intensity on the surface, I was completely trusting and at peace. So that's different from what you're describing. You are consciously acknowledging that. Yeah.
It is, you see, we are two. The dilemma, the actual puzzle that drives us, all human beings, is because we are two. I am an animal which has evolved over billions of years, and I'm experiencing that evolvement. I have evolved a lot from being 3 months old to 5-year-old to 20-year-old to 40-year-old. So there is a movement that my consciousness is growing within the zone of limited conditioned consciousness. But every now and then with an epiphany, with something, with a shock, I touch upon the other zone of consciousness, the supra zone, if you like, the quantum field of consciousness. It is that. So I have to accept the human side, the limitation, yes. And that's why I said earlier on, I managed to switch off, because they are in that zone of confined consciousness. It's important for them to go through it, exercise, do, communicate, speak, and to allow to talk. Expression, self-expression is vital. You know, freedom of speech is vital. 100 years ago, it would have caused a lot of trouble. Therefore, religions and others consider it the blasphemous. Not anymore. Now it is essential for the health of human being, because all of those horizontal measures we had, community, what do they say? It is not blasphemy. It's gone. Now it is almost vertical, vertical, vertical. You and the presence of the absolute. So 50 years ago, it was very much, what do the neighbors say? Nowadays, you go to another country, nobody knows you, you change your name and you reinvent yourself. You know? So
yes,
it's changed radically. The emancipation of women is another big issue, and so on. So we are in another zone. Now we are in the human consciousness state. We are conditioned consciousness. We have inherited this and that from the parents, from society, from religion, but the light of excellence, the light of truth, the light of the moment, the immensity of now is divine and direct. It's now. So time, in a sense, is your umbilical cord connecting to God, who's timeless. It has changed. You know, you look at some of the great writings of great Sufis, Ibn Arabi. You know, so much of it had to be couched in different ways, in different language, because he would have been slaughtered. In fact, as it was, he was ignored and neglected and buried somewhere that people didn't know for centuries where he's buried. So times have changed. It's magnificent times. We can now say it as it comes now. It may be very stupid what one is saying, but also it may be very profound. And as you know, also often that which is mad and genius are often connected, because it is unexpected, it's different, it is radically, you know, declaring something new. So the situation I think we are in now as human beings is magnificent. We have to accept the limitations of humanity, and we have to constantly recalibrate with the inner light of divinity. And that calibration is as good as the ability to stop thought, stop all aspects of identification with the so-called me. I have been given this illusion of security, tranquility, well-beingness by the so-called me. Don't deny that biography. Maybe write a book of it, maybe somebody, but that is not you. The real you is not an identity. It is a reality which is boundless. In religious terms, what they call it spirit, soul, is divine. It has no beginning or no end, doesn't die. All of the other attributes of God, in a sense. So if you accept that, then you won't fear losing the security of the so-called I. You allow that drift to take you out of the so-called security of knowing, touching, evaluating, being sane, into another zone from which suprasanity comes and also insanity comes. So you have to be careful.
Mm.
Because you can be completely gone here, but gone to where? Gone to the light that gives it its life, or gone to schizophrenia. I mean, yeah, there is that point. So it's for that reason in the past, they would say, if you are on a spiritual path, then you need to find some guide who had already been there. I remember many years ago, I benefited a lot from the metaphor of skiing. If you're on the lower slopes, you fall, you don't mind, you get up, and everybody tries to teach you because they're all learners anyway. It's like like spiritual class. Everybody's trying to teach because everybody wants to be a teacher.
Yeah.
They love the teacher or the prophet, so they all want to be that. But there is no that, you see. Now, so you get, and the middle slopes are a bit more, you can bruise yourself. Now, when you are really on the higher slopes, then you need to have an instructor who, by looking at him, you know what he's doing and what he expects you to do. So that is the same also with the journey along the spiritual path, away from the lower darknesses of the conditioned consciousness and the ego, which is essential. You know, we have to revere the ego because it emanates from the source of reverence. But also be careful because, like Satan, it burns you. So say, thank you, ego. I love you because you've really showed me what not to do. Wonderful. Thank you. I owe you more than others. But don't denounce it, but turn away from it to that which is more amorphous, less identity, less specificity, more boundless, timeless reality.
Well, did you, you see, some of the people that I interviewed told me that what helped them most in their spiritual journey were failures and misfortunes. One of them even called himself, he said that he's a mystic by catastrophe, that the catastrophes of his life made him a mystic. Is that, have you been helped or pushed along or pulled along your way by such events?
Yes, but I never went into that culture of mysticism or higher and lower. It was for me, as I mentioned earlier, fairly natural stages of awakening. And it is, if you are moving from a restricted consciousness, conditioned consciousness, towards higher, if you're moving from dim light to higher light, so it's a bit of a shock to the eye, actually. Sudden flash of, so yes, but I took it in my stride. I never considered these to be great moments of epiphany that you have to now brag about or light about. So it's normal. It's normal for you to lose yourself. It's normal for you to don't know who you are. Brilliant, welcome. As a child, you were defining yourself as this, that, and the other, and that definition changed, modified, good. And now you don't know who you are, wonderful. That you are welcome to the club of being in the interim phase between heavens and earth, middle people. You know, your soul is heavenly, eternal, and your so-called idea or identity as a human is limited. Began with a poor mother with all the suffering she'd had to, you know, eject you, and then you suffer now from memories of rejections until you die. It's not a big deal. It's natural. The body is not yours. Chemistry, the physics, the mind is not yours. Say, thank you very much. You helped me along in this dark earthly journey. Now I know there is only light, and it was that light that also showed me the darkness. Thank you very much. Goodbye. It doesn't become catastrophe. No, I don't. That's why I never experienced any real catastrophic shocks whatsoever. It depends according to, you know, where you have emerged from and what you need. I think nature and God is the most perfect, if you like, provider of the remedies of the. I didn't need that, obviously. Other people may have needed it. I don't denounce it. It's good for them. But ultimately, the outcome is the same. that you were an entity, you are an entity, but it becomes less and less important. So, 50 years ago, if a person called me with my name and a badly pronounced, I would take notice. Later on, I wasn't even who they are calling. Now I think they are mistaken. They've taken my identity as a name. And I leave it. I say, fine. They assume I am a name. But good. I don't mind. We have to laugh because really it is divine stroke upon us. It is that.
Yes.
It is. It's reality, eternity, the truth is camouflage. And it appears like this, appears like this, appears like this. All of them appearances. They all have a touch of reality. But the real is beyond them all, within them all, before them and after them. So we have to acknowledge it because it has a touch of the divine. The moment is important. It has a touch of the infinite. But we like the moment. It's a live show because it's live now. It's touching, if you like, through the umbilical cord of space and time, the eternal divine. Fine, but nothing emerges unless it is through the filters of the eternal divine. It's not a big deal. It is no longer a huge thing. It's the only thing. Everything else were tiny little shadows and blips of that. That's why I think we're coming to a zone in life that this business of awakened being, enlightened beings will become common. I already see it in many, many young people. Say, look, it's obvious. You want money, you get money, but you also get lots of kicks in your groin and lots of lies and lots of deceptions. That's how it is. More and more young people, if they're brought up in an environment of reasonable love and affection and tranquility, before their end of teens, they said, it's obvious. You want this, you have to go there, do that, do that. If not, it's no longer a huge fancy, you have to go up huge mountains in order to find somebody who's going to dazzle you a bit. No, the source of dazzlement is in your own heart. So.
I want to ask you a little bit about your personality and your, how shall we say, how has your personality changed over life and maybe as a result of your spiritual journey? So, for example, in Judaism, there is a proverb that says, the greater the person spiritually, the greater the passions and the desires. Is that your experience, or is it the other way around, that the desires and passions actually went down?
No, it's correct. That statement is correct if you are looking at it from the zone of emergence. The plant is emerging from the soil, full of bacteria, full of this, full of it's emerging. So it's passion. So it's correct. But a point reaches when you are truly living the passion. You are finished. You are overwhelmed by the passion. There is nothing other than the passion. So there is no more any of those metaphors. So I don't know what you're talking about. Passion for what? There's only that. So it's correct also. But that second statement, that there is only passion, can only be done in silence, can only be done in a way that you don't want to puzzle people, you don't want to confuse people. So you leave it at that statement that you made. Is good. It's very wholesome, very correct. It's as good as your passion for the infinite truth. Fine, and leave it at that. But what is after the infinite truth? What's there? So that's it. Then you become, like many people, some of whom I've met, some of whom I don't. Take the wonderful story of Ramana Maharishi. What is there to say? And people came and went. The main objective was to take a photograph next to Ramana Maharishi. Big deal. And he didn't know who they were. Swami Paramananda had come now all the way from where it is now to take a picture. So that's others, of course, because it was very dramatic. So they may still carry some of the dramatic, if you like, flavors. A lot of passion, a lot of this. So the end result is the same as that which was before the beginning. So they are inseparable. In the zone of infinitude, in what you may pseudo-scientifically call it the quantum field, there are all kinds of millions and zillions of fields of energies that we go into. If you go into the energy field of generosity, you give everything, you take it when it comes to you. Or you go into the zone of sorrow and meanness and sadness. It affects you. You can't. Or you go into touch the zone of infinitude. So some people will say, look here, he's in that zone. You will never make any sense out of it. Others will may even say, look, he's gone a bit mental. All of it has some truth in it. It is through truth, touches of truth and the divine light that we have better understanding, higher understanding, more knowledge. Eventually, if you truly touched the source of cosmic knowledge itself, you're not interested anymore in more information and more. Not that you can say, I've attained it. Once you say, I've attained it, it's like Buddha says, kill him. He says, I am a Buddha. No, there's no such.
Yes.
You just say it has attained.
Well, do you have a sense of what's ahead of you, or what's the growing edge?
Of course.
Pulling you forward?
It's already here in me. It's boundless. It's already there. Life without boundaries, not identified with the birth and death. What is ahead is already. So, and I know it and I see it and I resonate with it according to the authenticity and the honesty of my calibrating, resonating, being with it. That's all. Of course. No, all of us are seeking the same thing. The biggest issue in life actually is nature of death. Inadvertently, we want to know, a story is not complete until it ends. So what is the end? What is death? Once you know that the death was only the end of the second womb, you're now born into the infinitude of reality itself without an identity. Then you begin to be relieved. It may take a bit of a while to get accustomed to being you, the real you, not separate from the eternal one, without an identity or a personality or a character or all. Without having denied all those phases. But they're like skins have been shed. Fine, you can go there and look at it, say, this is how I was then, full of ambition, full of drive, wanting to change the world, wanting to teach everyone, seeing everything as one. Fine, fine. Gone, it's not there anymore. As it had been before creation. There's only one. Without that big bang from which within a split of a second, everything happened. Because it has emerged from the infinitude to the finitude. So that's why within 1/100th of a second, everything already was there. It's like that. Because there are two zones of consciousness. One is conditioned, limited, bounded, and the other one is infinite, which is our soul. So it's a natural process. You know, this business of enlightenment, awakening is not a big deal. It's the only deal. There's nothing else. So in the meantime, you take professions, you have to earn your keep. If you have dependents, nothing wrong with that. As long as it doesn't bring about more, if you like, suffering, like drug dealing, this dealing. It causes more suffering and ignorance. But take a job, make a thing, there's nothing wrong with that. Talking about people I learned from, there was a sweeper in Lebanon. You know, I had a beautiful apartment overlooking the ocean, overlooking the Mediterranean. And early morning, I see this man sweeping the pavement, which is a white pavement, because of the, like a corniche, people would be walking. Whenever I was up that time, my big veranda, I look at him. The way he swept, it was as though it was a love affair with the pavement. It's very rare in the East, you know. People all want to have more money. Anyway, so one day I managed to go down and greeted him. I mean, a beautiful face. I think he was a Durzi. Anyway, so I asked him, I said, you must tell me your secret. He looked at me. He said, I only live now. I'm sweeping as though this is maybe the last sweep I'm doing. It's now. I nearly fell, honestly. I said, no, I'm not qualified to talk to this man too much. Thank him and go away.
Yeah. I have a somewhat of an abstract question, but it's really the question that is at the heart of my research. How do you know the infinite? What are the tools or means through which we know the absolute?
This is the tool. You know it is limited, you keep it aside. Through this. This is the master to tell me that this is limited, it's time-based, space-based, it will pass. If you can help it to improve it, do it. If not, wait. What's a few thousand years between friends? But we have emerged from really an immensely dark situation. Not a few thousand years ago, a few hundred years ago, 50 years ago. There is a rise and rise and rise and rise in consciousness, very fast. Much of our crisis nowadays is a spiritual crisis because we don't realize the goodness that we are being given now. You know, the respect for life, humanity, ease of movement, travel, talking to people from across different cultures, religions. This is a magnificent, gift. So it will soon put an end to a lot of rubbish and lies that the miserable, if you like, so-called political world or the economic or the financial world given us. They're all falling apart. The political, economic, and all of these crises are far worse. Now it's leading us to a major mental crisis, question of mental distraction and illness. This is going to be the key in the coming few years. Everybody's disturbed because they were promised this, that, and the other. None of it can be realized. So you are in lockdown. So where do we dare turn to? This is all very spiritual. It's direct hand of God, if you like. It's not to punish or reward. This is how it is. This is natural. Our nature is to calibrate with the infinite. How? Recognize that which is finite. So it's not by through any fantasy or some, great vision. No. So I know this is short-lived. It's due to human being, due to our situation. Intense, if you like, building, abuse of nature, carbon footprint, plastic. It won't last. We'll suffer. We'll choke as we are. So keep quiet. And also make your life correct. Be less wasteful yourself. Be ready to let go which is not yours, the body and the mind. Then where is the fear? So the issue of death and being your soul is a big. If there are a few million people who know that, and they are living amongst others and functioning, then we take away all of the issues of mysticism and all that mysterious. Nothing is mysterious. God is revealing himself through all of these things. Sometimes through the darkness. So I consider Satan is a great agent of Rahman. So it's darkness. We don't like darkness. So he's reminding you, don't go there. This is not right. Come back by your will. The key is to exercise will by permission of the giver of that will.
Yeah. So I have one final question, which is more kind of consulting with you about my research. So I am continuing to interview other spiritual exemplars of different traditions, and my belief or conviction is that everybody who comes to a high point in their development, or as people climb or reach higher in their development, the more a certain essence, certain flavor is revealed that is identical, that is the same for all people, no matter what tradition, what culture they come from, what language they use to conceptualize their understanding. how can that essence, what can I ask, or what would I look for, and what would I describe in my research that would highlight that essence, that would clarify it? So if you were in my shoes as a researcher, what kind of questions would you ask, or what would you look for in different people?
You have already answered it, actually, in your own way, in the way you are doing it. In that, the beginning for a child, for a one-day-old child, a one-month-old child, there's hardly any discrimination. A 3-month-old begins to be more discriminative. A 2-year-old is all the time beginning to discover what it likes, what doesn't like, what smell, what touch. And the teenager connects the mental likes and dislikes with the physical, they're jumping, and to be acknowledged, to be embraced, to be loved. You know, and the sports field, the most important thing a child wants is to have one of the parents there to clap for him or her. They've not been abandoned, they're loved.
Mm.
This is only to make it easier with maturity to realize that God has never abandoned you, or reality is ever present in you, whatever name you give, that there is no abandonment, there is no distance, there is no forgetfulness. God has never forgotten. God has no memory. It is the source of all memories. So it is very important, I think, to realize that the cycle that we are in is one of zillions of other cycles: birth, growth, maturity, discriminating, mind, emotion, spirituality, back again to that precinct of oneness. After discrimination, after discernment, after choosing the good as against the bad, choosing light against darkness, choosing generosity against meanness. After all of that, you're neutral. I used to be personally also enjoying the act of giving, physically, mentally, everywhere. It's wonderful. It's a tiny little touch along the path of evolution, of the arc of consciousness to rise. It's hungry, let them be quiet. They need medical treatment, let the pain be less. So I used to enjoy that. But for years now, I'm not in that position anymore. It doesn't touch me anymore. Enjoying it or not enjoying it, it's not my zone, it's not my restaurant. So it's not my kitchen. So, but I understand the others are in that kitchen. Wonderful. I encourage them. It's great. So doesn't mean, but I have come from all of those kitchens as well, and so on and so on. So you have to be honest to the state of your return back to that infinite oneness by natural leaving behind dualities, multiplicities, pluralities. You understand them. You've been through it now. It's not that you have now greater being. No. The being is one being, its light is in you, and that light began to deal with the childhood shadows, young age shadows, grown-up shadows, philosophical shadows, whatever. Until such time you find there is only that is, has been, and will be. So, like the Pope meeting with the Sistani, it was a beautiful scene. Could not have even imagined not long ago. It had to have Iraq almost destroyed, finished completely, to have one man sitting in the middle of the end of nowhere, quietly, had gone through this one specific ladder, and that is to do with the Islamic Shia theological ladder, to reaching the point of almost, if you like, as the Pope even said, he said, the ultimate, the great sage. This is open to everyone. And a man coming all the way from Rome, to having been subjected before that to several trips to other wealthy other countries, to almost obnoxious levels of ostentatiousness and all of the showing. Here to go to the end of a little alleyway, to a quiet place, a one-room dwelling of a person. And the ultimate indictment, he said, I've not seen a politician for at least 10 years. That means they are not trustworthy. I don't want to be with somebody satanic. I mean, these are big events. And this in itself, this big event is a huge thing. This is the proof of essence is one, the origin is one, the destiny is one. Different gods, different religion, different background. I think this is magnificent. I think we have to celebrate these things globally. It's a global celebration that there are evidences in the outer of the one governor of the entire cosmos. That's it.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Same thing with me. Really, same thing. I feel the same. And that's all because of honesty in your heart and courage and commitment. They are rare. I really congratulate you. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Same thing.